And I'm going to
Bye.
bring in our next two panelists right now. I got Mike and I'm getting John. All right. John, Mike, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, looking good. Hello, hello. All right. Where are you both at, John? Starting with you.
I'm in Spain, Valencia. Been here for a year. It's amazing. I like it.
Awesome. And Mike?
I'm in Sofia, Bulgaria. Been here for the basically whole of my life, besides the college.
Oh my! So it's late for you guys. Thanks for staying up late for me and having this session. I'm really excited to talk. We just talked about how like the growth components of a company, and you guys have been able to grow businesses and then get interest from maybe a larger party that says either we're going to buy all or part of this business from you. And I think in a lot of people's mind, when they're a Shopify app partner, they're building this tool. I think that's always kind of one of the main goals, right? Is to exit to sell, to close it out like that. I mean, it's either that or you have ongoing revenue generation, which is of course another way to look at it. But at some point, you're probably thinking, I'm going to sell this tool. So I really want to talk with both of you today to understand that process from start to finish in order to perhaps relay that information to other app and technology companies here and give them some advice. And most importantly, prevent them from making any mistakes. It's always about preventing the mistakes because you can't always give somebody good advice, but you can give them what bad things are to do and make sure that they avoid that. So briefly, if you can, Mike, and we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey with SMSBump until today.
I was actually thinking with starting with John since he got acquired first, but okay, let me go first. So
yeah.
we started.
Was it a race? Were you guys chatting with each other? Like, no, I'm
all
going
the
to
time.
beat
you. All the time. He gives pretty cool socks, so I'm gonna miss them. But there are plenty of other brands that I can get. All right, cool. So we started at October 2017, and we have launched the app a little bit earlier than this, but we kind of like left it drifting. Back in the days, we used to have a agency which was building apps for different platforms. So Magento, OpenCart, pretty much open source e-commerce. So this is actually how we learned how to build and develop products. We built around north of 120 of different apps. So some of them were successful, some of them were not that successful, but at the end of the day, the good thing was that we got a pretty good feeling as to how to build, how to create a roadmap, how to execute, how to build features, how to prioritize. So basically anything that Romain said was really, really cool and kind of like overlap with what we did. And we got acquired at January 2020. So I think 2 years and 7-8 months, give or take.
And full acquisition, you're still working as the CEO of SMSBump. Briefly, we'll get into it more, but what's that status like?
Yeah, I'm still working for the company. It's a great company. Just raised a ton of money yesterday, biggest round ever for us, 75 million. So we're just working really, really hard on to building a whole suite of products, and that's the vision of Yotpo.
Awesome.
But yes.
And John, let's hear that story as well.
So yeah, the Storetasker story is Storetasker actually started as an extension to the Carson service. The HeyCarson.com was a very narrow, and still is, a small task service. And we just saw an opportunity in very early, I think it was January 2016, for a very specialized marketplace for Shopify experts. And Shopify had their directory at the time, but they didn't have like a sophisticated system that protected both the merchants and gave a great experience to the experts. So we built that over a couple of years. And at first it was supposed to be an extension to Carson, but it just kind of grew grew on its own. And after, after building up the community and, I think at the end, we had about 130 or 140 daily active experts that were earning at least part-time revenue, with a good chunk earning full-time revenue. By early 2019, I knew that we had something of value, but I was still running both companies and both brands, and that was a pretty big challenge. So I was actually early 2019 really looking to, there was value in both, and I was looking to sell one or the other. I was very intentional on it to free up my time, and I was running 2 full teams, so I was kind of maybe doing a disservice to both teams at the same time by not being full on either. And I think in May, I had quite a few people approach us, and it just wasn't, I just didn't feel like it was right. And in May last year, I just decided to sit down and I wrote 5 emails to potential companies that could acquire us. And one of them got back to us, and we started the conversation, and it was just felt like a fit. And the process takes a lot longer than people think. I think, like, the first conversation happened early May, and the announcement happened mid-October. So yeah, it was a pretty emotional summer for me, and there was all kinds of things happening. But in October 2019, we announced the sale, and I was very proud. I was very, it was a very emotional process for me, but I was super proud that we built something that another business would find that much value in, and take it on. And there were a lot of challenges with that business also, right? It's a marketplace, disintermediation, incumbents. It was a pretty heavy thing to manage 2 businesses, both bootstrap businesses also. But yeah, I was very happy with the outcome.
So what's interesting here is that in both of your cases, you had this sort of journey of prior experiences, we could say, right? So with Hey Carson, and then maybe John, walk me through a little bit before Hey Carson. You must have seen, maybe, were you an expert in the Shopify ecosystem, and you're like, there's got to be a better way?
I've been in the e-commerce space since 2001, and I've failed a bunch of times since then. I've had a couple of small successes, but back in 2015, it just felt like the merchants were underserved, and the agencies were coming in serving the high end, and just merchants trying to figure out Fiverr and Upwork was very challenging for them. Like, yeah. You have to, if you want to save on salary or compensation by hiring developers overseas, that can work, but you better have a deep understanding of the cultures that you're hiring in, or you're going to either make mistakes or you're going to have bad communication through the process. And I had learned all this because I was in e-commerce. I lived in the Philippines. I lived in Russia. I lived in Mexico, and I lived in Canada. So I had that little edge that I was able to hire. As a non-technical entrepreneur, I made all the mistakes of hiring engineers, and that was like what Carson was for the Shopify merchant world.
That's interesting. I've made some of the very similar mistakes. So, and it takes a lot to learn that. So in this case, both of you have a little bit of a different story here, perhaps. You saw, but in both cases, I think that what's clear is that you're both identifying a gap in a market. Your gap is saying, like, Upwork and Fiverr are not catering towards the merchant. They don't really understand that. And for that reason, there's going to be a big miss. And then you're thinking about Shopify doesn't really care about the expert at that well. So you're like, I think I can bring something of more value together there. And so that's your disruptor. And then Mike, I think in yours, whether maybe, and you tell me, maybe you stumbled upon it, or you saw SMS as a category that you could tackle. And so, like, what was it? Was it like, I think SMS is going to pick up in the next few years? Or was it like, well, we're launching 125 different tools, let's launch an SMS tool as well?
Yeah, so it was just a combination of different factors. First and foremost, we were using email just like everyone else. We just noticed that the recent campaigns weren't bringing the results that they used to do. And maybe that's because we didn't use Klaviyo back in the days, but overall it wasn't such a good experience, I would say. And then we also had some experience with text messaging. We have built a few projects for customers, mainly in the Middle East, that had to do with text messages. We always pushed them and wanted to expand on them, but they always said no. And remember, that was the time when Facebook Messenger was the absolute killer of SMS and whatever.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we asked ourselves, listen, what can be a good product where people can communicate to one another? And then, SMS came as the proper contender. We did some market research on Shopify. And of course, back in 2015, when we built the very, very basic version of the product, we built it for Shopify, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, and OpenCart, if I'm not mistaken. And then we had to make a decision as to which platform we should, build it for properly. And we did some research. We decided Shopify is a pretty good contender. Our gap was that back in the day, all of the SMS tools were just connectors to either Twilio or any of the aggregators. So you had to get an API key, API secret, you just go paste it, by your own number. It was very difficult. So what we offered actually is essentially just a very easy way, plug and play installation, very, very easy to use, couple of clicks, Shopify style, non-techie. And at the beginning, we had to explain why people need to bother about SMS. And then once they started seeing all those results, it was the word of mouth effect. And I think we all see where SMS is today.
Yeah. And so and SMS growing as a channel, aside from the fact that everybody has a mobile phone and is probably on it right now while they're watching this, it's growing exponentially. So you're riding that wave. You're riding the Shopify wave. And you made a bet on Shopify early on that's clearly paying off. And right now you're Shopify only, correct?
We do a little bit of BigCommerce as well, but again, just like Roman said about Magento, it doesn't bring lots of harvest.
Yeah, different industries to sell it to, for sure. Different merchant types.
Correct.
Let's move into this process of selling the company for both of you. I want people to be thinking about. I mean, obviously, you've had phenomenal growth and success for both of you, and but they have to figure that part out on their own, or maybe the Talk with Roman can help with that one. If we're thinking about acquisition, Jon, you said you sent 5 emails, and you knew that you were selling a little bit more out of freeing up time as well to focus a little bit more. What did the email say? How did you want to position this offer?
I was upfront and I asked for advice, and I did say that I felt like Storetasker would be a good fit under these people's umbrella, and so I didn't mask it at all. I said, like, look, this is my issue. We were on a growth trajectory also, so I had confidence sending those emails, and I think 3 or 4 of the emails ended up in just really good conversations. A couple of people I knew already, a couple of people I didn't, and so I even got value from those replies. And it was. I think a lot of people expect people to just be interested, but you got to kind of put feelers out there. And I think it's okay to build your business and have conviction that you're building it to sell it. Just like it's okay to build a business for cash flow, to take that cash and put it into other assets. I think both are okay, and there's no reason to be ashamed to, from day one, that you're building to sell to this company. I think a lot of apps think that they can build and sell to Shopify, but what we're seeing, and it's amazing now, like it's happening not weekly, but at least monthly, we're seeing a lot of like partner consolidation. We're seeing partners buying partner companies, mm-hmm. and like at a really much faster pace than we see Shopify acquiring. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. You just need to kind of think of how you're going to build your service, your tool, to align with some of these bigger companies if that's your goal. But, you know, I admire Romain also. Like he's probably doing it for other reasons. He's got, and maybe Mike did it for different reasons also. But I thought it was a good time for me to reach out and write those emails and be honest from day one.
And Jon, were you thinking when you started Hey Carson or Storetasker, like even at the beginning, were you thinking this is something that will be acquired? Or were you thinking this is something that could provide steady cash flow for me here?
I think I started Carson for the cash flow. I think it was a business that was very profitable. It was a service business, not a lot of tech involved. I used like a few off the shelf tools to get it started. Now it has its own technology. But when I saw Storetasker getting some momentum, I'm like, okay, this is like, with Shopify growing, there's a lot of growth opportunity here. And even with Shopify building their own, experts marketplace platform, there's still room to dig deep and solve problems better than Shopify is solving them. If you ever want to have another conversation, there's like 3 or 4 other things I think they're not doing as well as they could be, and huge opportunities for partners. But yeah.
I'd love to have that conversation. 100%, but stayed on the topic of selling. Mike, I'd love to hear how you started your conversation with Yotpo. What was the first email exchange that occurred? Did they reach out to you or did you reach out to them?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to answer this, but just to add to what Jon said, I think you need to have a really good relationship with everyone in the ecosystem. Just try to be a gentleman, try to help, because usually when those, let's say, larger companies in the partner ecosystem starts making a decision or ponder about a decision whether they need to buy a company, they would go and ask their partners, hey, what do you think about this company? So if you have been an asshole, if you have very bad attitude, or if you're constantly, comparing your service and saying we're the best, everyone else is crap, this obviously doesn't speak well about your business attitude. So I think trying to be nice even to your competitors and just being in a frenemies type of a relationship, whenever you need to help them out, just help them out. Doesn't matter if they're your competitors. Tomorrow you might do a merger, you might buy them out, or they might buy you out. Just like Jon said, you need to have those people's emails at least, or just go and say hi, introduce yourself. With us, the situation has been a little bit different. We had a competitor which raised a pretty big round, so I would say most of the other companies which were in top 10 or let's say extended top 50 VCs started shopping for similar products. And with us, we had probably 1 or 2 intros from VCs from around the world, really asking whether we need money. We had even a few cases where they would fly us out to a destination, just talk to them, and then they would fly us back, including a meeting that we did have in Boston, where after probably 1 hour, the guy was ready to write a check to us, a pretty big amount. But to answer your question, we were on the lucky side. I never wrote a single email. We got all the light under the projectors, so constantly being reached out. We already said no to a few acquisition offers prior to the Yotpo ones, and just to add a little bit more sauce to what Jon was saying. What actually happened is that they reached to us around September, so we were able to close in January. Again, it's not a very easy process, and that would be on the fast acquisitions. You go through tons of stress. I mean, it's seriously very stressful. I know everyone might be laughing, but it's seriously, especially the attorney work and the lawyers, like going through every comma and semicolon and just saying this word is not proper, we need to change it for that one, and then you're paying a hefty amount for their
like $500 an hour just for that line by line review.
Actually, just to interject, this is where your relationship with whoever's acquiring you comes in handy, because at a certain point, the lawyers want to get it right, and you have to just be willing to give in a little bit, and so does the other party. And I think comes back to a relationship. Yeah,
exactly. Wow. Exactly. So in our case, they reached out to us, Derek. We felt like Yotpo were one of the few companies we were willing to talk to. I mean, pretty much same platforms. Adding a piece to their puzzle. Very close to our culture. Really cool founders. So it was almost like love at the first sight.
And you, and I know you guys, by the way, both are, I would say you're two of the nicest people in the Shopify app ecosystem.
Thanks, dude.
When I started a year and a half ago, I met both of you just through a Zoom call here, and you both helped me when I had nothing. So I thank you very much for supporting the ecosystem. But for Mike, I want to get a little specific here. Yotpo was one of the companies that you thought would be a good fit for acquiring you and building into the tool suite. Was there another company perhaps that you thought would have been a good fit that either wasn't interested or you reached out with or talked to aside from Yotpo?
I mean, to be honest, we didn't want to play any tricks. We really liked them. I mean, before the whole thing we had, you can't imagine how many calls, and before them actually coming and seeing us, and before us flying to see them and meeting the management and everything. We just wanted to be very transparent, and we were advised that we need to bring another one to raise the valuation a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're going to be working with those people, so we just wanted to put all the cards on the table, say what is the just price for us, and take it from there. In all transparency, there were other parties which were interested into actually acquiring us, and essentially we were considering them, but at one point we decided that Yotpo is the one that we want to go forward with.
What was it that you mentioned? Cool founders, cool team. You said culture fit. I mean, there had to have been some sort of way that you investigated this to find this fit. Like walk me through that process a little bit.
Sure. So at a first sight, we had to do a presentation as to our numbers, our growth, what we believe is important as a team, as a company, and we found a lot of, let's say, similarities between us and them, even though they're, I would say, I don't know, 30 times bigger than us back in the days. But we just felt like culturally we were very, very much connected and kind of like having the same vision. They presented their vision, and obviously we were one piece of the puzzle, part of their vision. If we said yes, we really liked their leadership team. That was another very strong component, which took us to the right direction. And also, let's not be blind. I mean, we are based in Europe, and the majority of our clients are based in the States. We didn't have any salespeople in the United States. We didn't have any partners, any good partnership, I would say, network in the United States. I think we just built a very good product, and this is how it got popular. So at the end of the day, just being presented with the opportunity to work with really big brands, to have let's say 80 to 100 salespeople, which are just selling your product to one of the most famous brands. And it was definitely something like that can bring the product to new heights. So this definitely got us excited about the future. And at the end of the day, there were a lot of check marks on our list. And also competitive landscape. We see that a lot of email guys are turning into SMS. I have no idea how successful they are, but with Shopify just expanding as quickly as the universe, it just gives food for all of us. Piece of the pie.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Jon, I want to bring it to you. And Mike mentioned the presentation. And also, Mike, I think like in your case, the value-added proposition for both sides. Jon, did you have to go through a pitch? Did you have your own Storetasker pitch deck? And what were maybe some of the metrics that Lorem wanted to see about the company?
So our conversation was a little less formal, but as soon as I felt comfortable with their buyer profile, like as soon as it felt good to keep the conversation going and we signed an NDA, I was like an open book. I was like, what do you guys want to see? What do you want to know? I even went above and beyond to share as many metrics as possible. I think they were attracted by the brand and the quick expansion into, you know, their bigger picture, which is to do what we're doing more effectively than to do what they were doing more effectively than Upwork. And we just had like this grip on the Shopify space. And that was obviously, it's a big growth channel for a lot of platforms now. And they're a funded company. So that was their motivation, the brand, the expert network, and the existing customers. I think right away. So yeah, so as far as metrics, of course revenue was interesting to them. What surprised them and what actually surprised me, because I had nothing to compare, was the repeat revenue rate of the people using Storetasker. And that was a reflection of how good the experts were on the platform at, you know, continuing to serve merchants with like medium, large, big, different jobs. And I think that was, you know, that really struck them. The repeat revenue rate on the platform was very high. So yeah, but I mean, as soon as I felt good, I also put all my cards on the table. And I think it paid off. It really kind of it built up the conversation. Momentum was another thing. Like we did have hangups, but I think we were speaking at least every couple days while we had these hangups, and they were great to deal with. And I think they were flexible. I had to be flexible at certain points. It was like a journey, and you know, we did make mistakes. I think I read or I listened to an audiobook called The Messy Marketplace by the guys at Permanent Equity. I listened to this after. And if I had one like piece of advice to anybody who wants to sell eventually, is listen to that audiobook. It's called The Messy Marketplace. I can link it up after. But they just kind of, listening to it, I just kind of went through all the same mistakes and emotions that they were outlining that could happen in a sell process. And, you know, other than that, I would just think like understanding the tax implication around the price that you're thinking in your head is really important. You know, that was maybe a little mistake that I made. I didn't fully understand the tax implication.
And now the government has a lot of more money.
Yeah, like I couldn't have done anything right away, but in Canada we have this thing called a lifetime tax exemption on capital gains if you sell a company. But we were selling an asset, so you know, had I spun off that asset a year prior, which I should have, I would have been eligible for this capital gains exemption. And so you can't do that last minute. It's like tax evasion.
I see.
So there's, you know, you could start thinking about it a good year ahead of time, and I think it's worth it. And in the end, it'll pay off.
I got you. That's really fascinating. So we thinking through the taxes that you're going to have to pay on selling the company. Retention being probably, and Mike, what about you? In your case, retention probably a really important component to
yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. In our case, you know, Yotpo are probably 150, 160 people company. So they have a person for everything. They came super prepared, like extremely prepared. And you need to do your homework. If you're asked about the number, you need to explain what it is. If it's not good, what are you going to do to fix it? But you need to be very, very confident. And if you don't know the answer, say, you know, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. Something like this. Like, don't try to be smarter than they are, because again, they have people who have been acquiring companies, and that was their sole job. So they know all the bullshit in the space. I think for us, it was retention. It was MRR, ARR. It was churn. It was how long retain, obviously, how long merchants are staying for, why are they dropping out? And again, with us, working with a very much larger organization than us, they have assigned a task team of several people that were just doing the due diligence into something very, very specific, and just me and my co-founder. You know, we had to wear 500 hats and run a company at the same time and hire people and all of that. So this is why I'm saying it was very, very stressful.
So it sounds like a lot of stress. I think the other 2 points to make: communication and transparency. You guys both provided that. So you talk about talking every few days through the process and being completely honest, like you just said, Mike, with you know, don't bullshit on the numbers. And Jon just saying I was an open book. Like, I think that that right there sums up maybe the process, and then be prepared to grow some gray hairs through through the conversations and pay a bunch of lawyer fees and and all of that. We are out of time, guys. I'd love to talk more. Is there anything we can do as a community for you guys?
Go ahead first, Mike.
So yeah, first of all, if you are considering doing SMS marketing, I would say go and type in SMS at the Shopify App Store. There are some pretty good apps. Ours is called SMSBump. Even if you don't choose us, you can't go wrong. I think now you should be thinking about starting to prepare for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So it doesn't hurt just to start building up your list in a compliant way. So when this holiday comes, you can blast all of your subscribers. I can promise you that SMS is going to be one of your top revenue makers. You know, subscribe to Derek's show and follow him on YouTube. And Jonathan, if you don't know about Shopify entrepreneurs, you know, definitely join his group and follow both of those great people.
And Jon.
Yeah, for me, I'm still, since October, I'm back on the Carson business, where we've actually been able to evolve it very nicely. We're really focused on growing our partners also. We have all kinds of partnership offers, including exposure in our Facebook community and exposure within our dashboard. We have a special perks section that we're really trying to bolster. I think Mike was probably one of the first offers. SMSBump may have been one of the first offers in there. But yeah, so we're focused on that. And Derek, man, you're doing, I mean, you, for like resilience, man, I really appreciate your contribution to the partner space and your consistency. I mean, running events like this is hard work. I thought earlier, how does he do it? But yeah, I really admire that. And Mike, it's nice to catch up also.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for that. And it's, I now have a team the same way you guys have had to build teams. You got to have people supporting you on it. But thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your guys' stories. And I look forward to seeing you guys at Shopify Unites at some point in the future, if not at another partner event or something like that in the near term future.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Pleasure.